sunshine in your name. We both started laughing when the sky started to rain. Get along down the road, we got a long, long way to go. Scared to live, scared to die. We ain't perfect, but we try. Get along while we can. Always give love the upper hand. Paint a wall, learn to dance. Call them up, buy a book, drink a beer, sing a song, make a friend. Can't we all get along? Saw my mother on a billboard, 1-800, get to know me. Wondered was she photoshopped or were her eyes really that lonely? Did she leave her hometown thinking she'd end up in LA? She break down in the desert and get stuck beside the highway. Get along down the road, we got a long, long way to go. Scared to live, scared to die. We ain't perfect, but we try. Get along while we can. Always give love the upper hand. Paint a wall, learn to dance. Call your mom, buy a book, drink a beer, sing a song, make a friend. Can't we all get along? Find out when you die, the keys to heaven can't be bought. Still don't know what love is, but we sure know what it's not. Sometimes you got to get along down the road. We got a long, long way to go. Scared to live, scared to die. We ain't perfect, but we try. Get along while we can. Always give love the upper hand. Paint a wall, learn to dance. Call your mom, buy a book, drink a beer, sing a song, make a friend. Can't we all get along?
She rather the eyes in my plastic cup. I said yes, man, fill her up. Tell me something good that I don't know. Cause this world's been kicking my behind. Life ain't been a friend of mine. Lately I've been feeling kinda low. And she looked back over her shoulder, pointed at the sign hanging up on the wall. Let's say everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright. Nobody's gotta worry about nothing. Don't go hitting that panic button. It ain't worth spilling your drink. Everything's gonna be alright. Alright. Alright.
So I nodded my head and said that's for sure. Dropped a few butts in the mason jar. Got those good old neon vibes on me. And whatever monkey that was on my back, he jumped off just like that, right into the deep blue sea. And I looked back over her shoulder, thinking about the sun hanging up on the wall. That said, everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright. Here we go. Nobody's gotta worry about nothing. Don't go hitting that panic button. It ain't near as bad as you think.
There he is.
Everything's gonna be
Good morning.
alright. Alright. Alright.
Stop the music. Good morning, Thomas.
Good morning, Craig.
I'm gonna rock it today. I am so excited. I have no booked appointments. I'm gonna crank through shit today. We had a very nice award presentation for award winners in South Tampa yesterday. Very cool. You know, it's really a big deal to make masters and above. So as we, by the way, was it yesterday? No, yesterday was not Wednesday. Chris did a really good job talking about preparing for Q4. And I think it's important, as we talk about our fundamentals, you and I were talking about that the other day, Thomas.
Yep.
One of our fundamentals is Century 21. And one of the things I'm really excited about Century 21 for is their awards and recognition program. And, you know, it gets to be old hat after a while, like Devin Weiser got the Hall of Fame award yesterday. That's 5 out of 7 years of Centurion production. That's masterful. I mean, Centurion now is what, $280,000?
Yes.
So at that level, you're at a 90% split. So what's 90% of 280 grand? Take home 252, pay some income taxes, but back in 200 grand a year for 5 out of 7 years. That's $1 million.
Yeah.
I remember when I was a kid, they had this commercial that says, and you can become a quarter millionaire, making $250,000 in your lifetime. And we're talking about people making 200 grand a year for 5 years. That's $1 million in 5 years. And it used to be, you know, a 40-year working career to make $1 million.
Right.
That's the potential that you have in this business, right? And look at that hot sheet every day and look at the people that are on it, scoring deals back and forth. And it just becomes possible when you see other people doing it. It's like Roger Bannister in the 4-minute mile, right? We talk about that stuff all the time. And one of the things that helps you get there is what we're going to talk about today is competence, right? And communication. So we're in the people and communication business. And Thomas and I were talking yesterday about what we're going to talk about today. And it's going to be having brutally honest conversations and knowing what you're talking about, right?
Yeah.
So let's face it, writing a contract is simple, right? Fill in the blanks. If there's an asterisk on the line, put something in it. You know, it's kind of easy. But it comes down to which contract do you want to use?
Correct.
And I'm not saying one's better than the other. They all have their purposes. But I think we would get more engagement from the consumer if we educated them along the way. So Thomas, you and I yesterday were talking about, okay, it's a tight housing market. We're competing with multiple offers in many situations. Now, I'm going to temper this statement with a lot of the agents that we're working with are not very bright. So
Say the least.
you come in with superior knowledge, right? But let's say you have a buyer and you've got multiple offers coming in and 3 of them are as is and 1 is a regular contract. Which one as a seller? So you're the buyer's agent. You know you're going into a multiple offer bid. How do you know that?
Well, you're going to ask the listing agent if you have other offers.
Exactly. So we're going to communicate. Are we going to text them?
No.
We're going to build rapport. We're going to sell our buyer, right? We're going to talk to what they're doing. Okay, so now we found out there's multiple offers coming in. What are we going to say? What would you say, Thomas, to your buyer when you know you're going into a multiple offer situation?
Well, I would definitely talk about, you know, the highest and best. This is not the time to try to lowball and see if the seller's going to come up, right? We got one shot at this. Let's go ahead and, you know, I would tell them highest and best. I would talk to them about escrow. I would talk to them, you know, before inspection period, and also get an additional escrow after the inspection period. And if they have closing costs, no closing costs. Let's just go in there with our highest and best, because the more that you ask for it, the less that they're going to receive their net. So I think it's very, very important that we break it down to them, right? So if they have let's do easy math, a $200,000 asking price, and then you're asking 3% for closing costs, you know, that's $6,000. So they're really going to be they're really asking going for 194,000, right? So we just have to make sure that 200,000 is now 194. That's not a full price offer.
Correct. And it's perfectly okay to come in at 206.
Right.
Right. So if you want to come over asking price, you can do that.
Over
Now,
the top. Mm-hmm.
one of the things, you know, Jeff talks about the perfect offer. You know, all cash, no contingencies, closing now, full purchase price, and anything you get away from that is going to diminish your offer. But let's talk about which contract would you counsel the buyer to use in a multiple offer situation?
I would definitely go with the residential.
The
because this one, correct, because this one you hold is the buyer and the seller feet to the fire.
I couldn't agree more. I'm going to put a chance here real quick.
And I think, Craig, you know, you and I talked about, and one of the things that we said that we need to take the time to explain both contracts to the buyer, because what do we always talk about? Options, right?
Yep.
And then by us giving them the options, then they can decide which is best, right?
Right. So let's have that conversation. Hey, buyer, if we go in as is, what are the challenges with an as is contract? Buyer can cancel for any reason whatsoever.
Yep.
Right? Do you guys think that really happens? I mean, I've seen it 1,000 times. My buyer puts an offer on this house, and while they're in the inspection period, the house 3 doors down comes on the market that's nicer. What do?
Cancel.
They cancel and go put an offer on the other house. What's wrong with that? Nothing. It's perfectly permissible under the guise of the contract. So if the listing agent knows that, and then you come in with a regular contract, let's talk about how a regular contract would be better for a seller and how we can make it better. The fear with the regular contract is you have the 3 repair limits.
Yep.
You have warranted items, you've got
WDO
and permits.
Yep.
And permits are a big deal when you're selling older homes. Right?
Absolutely. Yes, sir.
Now, benefit for the buyer on the regular contract is the seller has to ensure that the permits are valid. And as is contract, the seller does not. So on your $200,000 house example, the default provision in the contract is 1.5% for repairs. So that's $2,000, $3,000 per instance. So
$9 grand total.
So if you deliver a regular contract with default 1.5%, you're obligating, see my choice of words, obligating the seller to pay up to $9,000 in proceeds to get the deal closed. And that's why a lot of agents don't like this contract, because they don't want to obligate the seller to anything, right?
Correct.
So how could we mitigate that with the regular contract?
Well, we can go in there and ask for maybe 500, you know, to a little less, right? Third person's a 1.5. I mean, you could put 1,000 for each one. Now you're half of, what are you at, 3,000 versus 9,000, right? So it's different ways that you can spin it.
Well, I think here's the key, and this is where the ninja badass agent gets it. Even if you had $100 repair limit,
yep,
the contract is written in such a way that either party can pay the difference or either party can cancel.
Correct.
So let's play that out. You're the seller. I get a wood destroying organism report back that says the house has termites.
Yep.
And it's going to be a $750 repair bill.
Correct.
Right? So I wrote in a $100 repair limit,
which I'm obligated to pay.
You're obligated to pay the $100,
yep,
right? But if the amount is over $100, when you read the contract itself, it says either party can cancel or either party can pay the difference. So in this case, I'm the buyer. I'm freaking out. I say, yeah, you got termites in this house too. I don't want it. The limit's over, the repair's over the $100 limit. I'm going to cancel. What power do you now have as a seller?
I can cancel as well. But the thing is, I can also try to go ahead and negotiate that with the buyer and see if I can go half or I can pay it. It's one of the two if I want to keep it together.
Yeah, you can pay the difference. And if you pay the difference, you forced me to stay in the contract.
Absolutely.
Either party can cancel or either party can pay the difference. So if the seller wants to be a jerk and says, hey, look, I'm not paying a penny over the $100, then the buyer can say, fine, I'm not closing, and walk away. Or the buyer could say,
I'll
you know
pick
what,
up the
I'll
650.
pick up the 650 and keep the contract. Because
Right.
what the buyer may or may not know is the seller has a backup contract for $10,000 more, and he would really, really like the buyer to walk away.
Correct.
And the
Or
buyer,
you can split the 650 and pay 325 a piece. You know what I mean? I mean, the seller is in it for 425, the buyer's in it for 625. It's still a win.
yeah, it's a negotiation.
Right.
But what happened? The contract stayed together, or the
Correct.
parties have options that they didn't have before. Because under there,
Absolutely.
as his contract, buyer just says, I'm walking.
Yeah.
Over a stupid reason,
Correct.
right?
And then we're restarting the whole process all over again.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I like it.
Yeah.
So
And, you know, we talked about too, Craig, you know, when we talk about just slowing the process down, right? We know that these homes are really moving very quickly, right? I mean, we got what, less than 30 days on inventory, right? These homes, you list it today, tomorrow it's sold. But at the end of the day, I think on the listing side, we just need to do a better job at when we're previewing the home, right? I always was taught that, you know, you park across the street so you can actually see the home. You can see the home next to the left of it and to the right of it. And you start to walk towards the home and you start to look at the soffits, you know, the gutters, you see if there's any, like if they got screens, if there's any, you know, what do you call it, cobwebs and all of those things. You look at
stucco cracks.
flower beds, the cracks, everything. You gotta just don't preview the inside of the home and then go outside and look at the backyard. You should be walking all the way around the home, right? Just like you talked about yesterday about the neighbor who had the cracks in the stucco, right? What did you say? How much that's going to be?
$33,000.
See, and that needs to be fixed prior to listing it, right? So we have less issues if someone's coming in with the as-is. We also talk about the pre-love. You know what I mean? Just take a minute to slow it down and let the seller know how important it is to get in front of the issues versus dealing with it later.
Okay, so let's take my neighbor for example. I just like this example. I made it very clear, just as a friend, that he needs to get that looked at before he puts his house on the market.
Yep.
He took my advice and had it looked at, but still put the house on the market. So now they're going to have to take the stucco off, re-stucco, and repaint. It's a big house, $33,000 worth of work. So now the buyer, that's going to have to be added to the seller's disclosure statement. And the buyer is going to see that stucco. What else is the buyer thinking now?
What else is wrong with the home?
What else? If that side of the house is stucco cracked, what's the other side look like? What about the back? So now I'm creating doubt in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
What if he had delayed? And it's funny because I look out, I can see out my window that house. And if there's a showing going on, and you know where the agents park?
Right in the driveway?
In the driveway.
Yep.
Yeah, it's silly. I mean, guys, basic 101. We haven't done a live Beggins University in a while when we go through the buyer system. But clearly we say, park across the street and look at the house from a view. And I think Thomas's point is, what is the buyer looking at? The cosmetic shit. Is it pretty? Is it nice? And you got to be the guy who comes through and says, you know what? I noticed there's a stain in the ceiling there. So chances are the child didn't throw brown juice up there. So there might have been some activity. Now, that's a problem because the seller's agent should have brought that up on the listing preview. Hey, a buyer's going to see that, or if a buyer doesn't see it, a good buyer's agent's going to see that, and they're going to call it out. And I'm not saying to hide anything, but if you've got a stain in your ceiling, it generally means there was a leak somewhere.
Correct.
And if you fix the leak, that's great, but fix the stain too.
Paint it, exactly.
But do not paint it and not fix the leak.
Correct.
Right?
Yep.
So
Also, too, you know, looking at the baseboards too, you know, looking to see if there's any brown from water running there. You know, you have to train your eyes to look for problems. You know, I think we got this thing about looking how beautiful homes are. Our job is to yes, we looking at the home, it's beautiful, but let's see if there's any issues with it so we can address it then. It's
Right.
very, very important.
So what are the things that we could be looking at as we're showing a house? You mentioned cobwebs, mud daubers. How about the soffits,
Soffit, gutters,
gutters, the
the
eaves?
roof. Yep.
You know, I had a roof leak up here, and it was a tile roof, and the valley had problems, and I had a roofer come and fix it.
Sure.
And he pointed out that, he said, Craig, this has been leaking for a while. I said, how do you know? He says, look at your soffits. So that dirt, that's
Mhm.
water has been running down into that. So there's little telltale signs of where problems are
Sure.
that you can see. But, you know, sometimes I was talking to my dad yesterday, and we had an agent who was putting an offer on a house. And it was a big house, $1 million plus house on the water. And the agent was explaining to my dad how the flood insurance is going to be like $11,000 a year. The house is super low. It's old. I can't remember all the other problems that it had with it. And it had permit issues, had all kinds of stuff. And my dad said, the only reason you should recommend they buy this house is so you can get a commission.
Really?
Yeah. So, and that's important because our commission is not important. What's important is getting a good house for our customer. So sometimes fundamentally, you can shoot yourself in the foot by calling out the problems, but ultimately that's where you're going to get your good customer reviews from.
Correct. Yep.
So, and that's a tough line, you know, because you hear the old boiler room type of sales presentation, you know, go for the juggler, make the sale, close the deal. Not when you're a consultative real estate professional.
Sure.
Right? You're going to counsel the customer and say, hey, that doesn't mean it's not a good deal. It just means go in with your eyes wide open. And then you make an offer to the seller. If the seller didn't have an agent driving them responsibly before they put the home on the market, then they're going to have to be educated about the condition of their home after it's on the market. So yes, you know, your house is a very good deal at $785.
Correct.
If it was in good shape. But now that I see the stucco is bad and this is bad and this is bad, I'm going to offer you $745, and here's why.
Exactly. Yep. And you're 100% right, Craig. I mean, that's where you're going to get the low ball offers because they see that there's issues there. And then what happens? The seller is pissed off that they're getting the low offers, right? Because what do we always say? That your home is only valued at what the buyer is willing to pay, right? At the end of the day. So let's get in front of it and get the problem fixed. And if it's $400 or $500 to do an inspection on it, let's go ahead and do it because that's going to give you a peace of mind. So if someone is coming in with an as-is, which we see more than a residential contract, we're not going to have issues. We're going to be able to fly right past the inspection period.
Well, I think it's common sense too. When you go and are trading in your car, you know, there's a whole real estate company out there now that's trying to make trading in a house. It's like what an OfferPads concept.
Sure.
We'll buy your house so you can go buy another one and you don't have to mess with putting on the market and all that stuff. And there's a convenience fee involved in that. And they call it a convenience fee.
Yep.
Right? But if we're going to try to maximize value, we don't go to CarMax with a dirty car.
Correct.
We clean up the car, put some shampoo on the carpets, make them smell good, deodorize it, do all the stuff you do, clean it, and then you take it to CarMax and see what they'll give you for it. Right?
100%.
And they'll definitely pay you a little bit more. So,
right.
So I think one of the things you and I talked about yesterday is let's talk about how we explain to a buyer which contract they want to use. Because I see it all the time. For the seller wants an as-is contract for seller's convenience.
Right.
Dumbass. That's not for the seller's convenience. That's for a lazy agent.
Right.
Who doesn't take the time. So back to what we were saying, I've got a buyer in my car and they decide they want this house. We call the listing agent, we build some rapport. We find out that there's another 3 showings going on today and they're expecting multiple offers. So what do we say? What's convincing for us to say to the buyer about which contract do you think we should use? What if you just said that to them? Hey, buyer, which contract do you think we should use? What are they going to say? Huh?
What do you mean? Yeah, what are you talking about?
We have an option?
We have an option? Exactly.
No agent's ever given me an option before.
Right.
So I would go into an explanation. Let's see, I'm just going to play it off the cuff. Okay, so let me tell you, there's two types of contracts. There's an as-is contract, which gives you the right to get an inspection. And if anything is wrong with the house, you can cancel and walk away. Okay? Now, where it's dangerous in a multiple offer situation is the seller could easily get a backup contract.
Yep.
So if you walk away, he doesn't really care because he's got another backup buyer waiting for him, right? So the buyer is going to be really enthralled by this concept. You mean if I don't like the house for any reason, I can cancel and walk away? Yep.
Yep.
That's what you do. But the seller has no obligation to make any repairs at all, even little minor things. In fact, we recommend when we have a seller with an as-is contract, we put a clause in the contract that says the buyer's inspection is for their benefit and education only. Any attempt to renegotiate the price will give the seller the right to cancel the contract. So if you're going in as is, you really need to be able to close at the price that you said. Don't go asking for repairs because the seller can cancel. Now, conversely, there's a regular contract that's not as is, where the seller has an obligation to fix 3 areas of the property. One is warranted items, which the contract actually goes through and says, these are the items that must be in working condition. And if they're not, the seller has to pay up to a certain amount to make sure they work.
Correct.
Then there's a section for wood destroying organisms, if there's termites, and then there's a section for termites. I'm talking to the buyer. So we can put any dollar amount we want. We can make it $100, we can make it $500, we can make it $1,000. So this way, when you do your inspection, if the inspection reveals something that's not up to speed, the seller has to get estimates and then cause the repair to be made up to that repair limit.
Correct.
But if the repairs are greater than the limit, then there's an option. Either the seller has the right to pay the difference or cancel, or you have the right to pay the difference or cancel.
Right.
So if there was a backup offer behind you, the seller might be inclined to just say, no, I'm not going to pay anything extra and let you cancel, but then you lose the house. But now you have the option, you can pay the extra $400 and get the house. I think that's where we miss a lot of the things going on in a market like this, is that the goal is to get the house.
Correct.
Right?
Yep. 100%.
We
and
lose.
If they're emotionally attached to this home, they will pay a difference in some of the repairs. So we have to make sure that we explain the 2 contracts to them. I think it's really important. I think what we're seeing now is everyone's just going with the as is, and then they're asking for repairs, right? And then they get pissed off that the seller doesn't want to fix it. So it's like restart. Like, how many times do you want to take your buyer around, right? Like, you're doing a double work. So if you can, hold the feet to the fire, I definitely will use the residential contract. And again, like you said, you took the time to explain it and you give them the option. What were you going to say?
Chris Reed wrote, it's important to ask the listing agent what contract the seller wants. That's an interesting take. And then Deborah, I said most agents are stupid. Deborah said agents aren't stupid. Most of the time, they're just not educated. Well, stupid and not educated to me are the same thing. It's just a nicer word.
She's being politically correct.
Yeah, I'm just talking to our closed group. Lauren says, look up at the ceilings for leaks and on the floor for cracks. I think so. She mentioned there.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about that. Everything is a negotiation. And so Chris said it's important to ask the listing agent what contract the seller wants. Well, I'm going to be a little negative Nilly here. Chances are the listing agent has not had a conversation with the seller on which contract they should use. Most of the time.
Yep.
But I will also tend to say that most of the time the listing agents would be the quote unquote better agents in the marketplace, because it takes more skill to be a listing agent than it does to be a buyer's agent. So they should know more. But I would suspect that most listing agents do not counsel the seller on which contract they want. So let's talk about that avenue. So we're at the listing agent now. and we say, seller, look, here's how the marketing works, here's how this market works. Most agents are delivering as is contracts now, which is fine. It's a really easier contract for you because you have no obligations to do any repairs. But in practice, most buyers are doing an inspection and then asking you to make repairs anyway. So in theory, an as-is contract says, here's your price. This is what I'm paying. You don't have to do anything else. It's a clean, clear, crisp contract. But in practice, that's not how it works. I mean, you guys chime in. Do you have as-is offers come in on your listings that buyers ask for repairs on?
It's Joe Dina. I always ask, as a listing agent, confirm the receipt of an as-is offer. This offer does not have a provision for repairs. If your buyer may want repairs, please submit on a general FAR contract.
That's a nice way to do it. It's better than saying, you idiot.
Right. And this is what we talked about before yesterday. Sometimes the type of contract desired is the list, I guess, as is in the MLS. I think that's what Lauren.
No, she said sometimes the type of contract desired is listed in the MLS. It'll say, for seller's convenience, please deliver an as-is offer.
Yep. And you already know it has issues.
That's what the seller said. I don't want to do anything.
Yep.
Yeah. And basically, I'm not going to do anything. Which, you know, all this stuff ties into, you know, prior proper planning yields positive results.
Correct.
Right? So all this stuff goes away. A lot of this stuff goes away when you have the home inspected before you put it on the market. Right?
Correct.
I'd be fine with an as-is contract if the seller gave me an inspection report that showed that everything was good.
All day, every day.
But now and think about this. I've got to spend $400 on a home inspector to come out to see if I even want this house. I got to pay $300 on an appraisal or $400 on an appraisal to see if I want the house. So I'm going to spend $800 before I even get the house. And then I'm going to cancel on an as-is contract. Doesn't make any sense.
Right. Joe goes, you can put your as-is language here so everyone can see it, please.
It's in the contract clause in .loop.
Yeah. You know what else too, Craig? You just mentioned about appraisal. So let's talk about, you know, VA, FHA when it comes to appraisal repairs, right? Now, also in there, the seller is going to be obligated to have to pay some of those repairs in order for the loan to go through.
That's right.
So, right. So that's a whole nother entity of the contract that we need to prepare the listing agent, the seller for, right? And the buyer.
Even if you have an as-is contract, the buyer is not allowed to do, especially on your VA, the buyer is not allowed to do certain things.
Yep, exactly. On a WDO, the seller pays it, right?
I guess the main thing I wanted to get across from this is we need to be having these conversations with the buyer and the seller about the contract options so they're clear. As a listing agent, I request regular contract in the realtor remarks. Would it be beneficial to include a regular contract and attachments filled out? Yeah, could be. Angela says, I always looked at as-is contract from the seller's stance. It's hard. I mean, so one of the challenges I'm having is what we teach as the result of the fundamentals that we have is doing the right job, which is oftentimes harder, right? But it's just better to do it right. And it's a hard thing to say because it's really easy to write an as-is contract. But Thomas, I haven't looked lately, but I think last time I looked, we have about a 27% cancellation rate where a contract goes active, goes pending, and then it cancels. I mean, I'll show you if you want to see. Let me show you as an example, I'll show you. I'm gonna, let's go here real quick.
I see more of that happening now, Craig, than ever, just because of the way the market is right now.
Yes, and it's just so easy to walk away, especially when they are not known. So I'm gonna share my screen. I'll take you behind the curtain. What is this? I'm just gonna look right now, this month. So this is from August 25th, just I'm going to search in, this is it. So OP is a status. Open pending is what Century Time called open pending. Canceled, 1.
Yep, come on.
Well, we're doing better today. 2, 3, 4.
Yep.
5, 6, 7, 8. 9, 10, 11, look at all the freaking contracts, dudes. 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. Magic number, 21. So 21 out of 243. So that's about 10%.
Right.
So
but that's only. Sorry.
That's 1 in 10. It's 1 in 10 deals are canceling, and this is in the month they were written. So some of these are going to cancel for financing things later on. Let's just pick one and see how long it took to cancel. So this one. Let's see. Listing was active on 8/24.
Mm-hmm.
Contract date was 8/29. So went under contract in 5 days. And when's the cancellation date? It doesn't tell me the cancellation date.
So the question is, was it canceled? Well, yeah, we don't know the cancellation date, so we don't know. That would help us with the inspection period, or it was canceled due to financing.
Well, it went on the market 8/24, it went under contract 8/29, so 5 days later.
Right.
So, and then in the last 30 days, it canceled.
Yeah, exactly.
So look at that. I just want to share this again. 235 sales in the last 30 days.
Strong.
A lot of contracts. And let's just look for fun. Just $2 million.
I saw it. She double-sided that too.
$2 million, $1,195, $1,045, $994, $985, $890, $870. It's some big stuff there, guys.
Yeah.
830. Cool. All right. So 10% canceling. That's not as bad as it has been, but still, that's 10% of the deals that we're writing, we're not getting paid on. So the buyer wasted money on a house they're not going to get. Seller got excited. All that other stuff happens. So I don't know. I'm missing my point here. The point is, I'm going to ask you guys to have more meaningful conversations with buyers and sellers about the type of contracts available to them. And that's a hard thing. It wouldn't be multiple offers, Nancy, because it would have been turned to pending unless it was accepted. Oh, that was actually Lisa's listing. She said it canceled for inspections.
There we go.
Yeah.
Yep. Proof is in the pudding.
Yeah, well, that's just kind of shitty real estate. So the poor buyer, is expecting a clean car at the dealership, and then he takes it for a ride and it's got all kinds of cricks and creaks and stuff in it. Yep. And so he says, I don't want it now, but he had to spend $400 to figure that out. James said, what are the reasons most often given for buyers leaving pending contract? That's just the reason. The seller didn't, what's the word I want to use? Model the property properly. When you go to a new home model center, what does that look like? Thomas, you're a vice president of sales for Lennar. Do they just, those houses are spit polished and shined.
Crisp. I mean, they've actually trained. Of course, they have cleaners come there, but they also train the new home consultants to even go in there and clean up. I mean, it's something that has to be done. The trash has to be empty. The kitchen has to be wiped down. You know, all of that stuff needs to be done. And every morning you got to walk that property and make sure it's at 100%.
Make sure the fake apples are in the bowl, the table are set, and the napkins.
Refrigerator is clean. Yes. Yeah. The cupboards are empty. They're clean. They're organized.
Yeah. And buyers are looking at that stuff. So that's the reason, James, is most people, they're disillusioned is probably the answer. So there's a halfway filled out seller's disclosure statement posted to the MLS that says everything's great, so they feel good about that. And their inspector comes in and finds out that there's all these little things that just made them disillusioned to the property. And then financing is the second reason deals cancel, which is a shame, because really we shouldn't be putting a buyer under contract until their financing has basically been applied for and readily approved.
Right. You know, there's another thing that you can do too, as a agent, a buyer's agent. We're preparing the contract, and we know we got to get the seller's disclosures signed. Are you just passing on the seller's disclosures and just saying you need to go ahead and look at this and initial it, or you as an agent, are you reviewing the seller's disclosures to see if there are issues with it prior to doing the contract? Right, that would help you along with going with the as is or residential as well.
Well, that's your whole point. Slow it down, guys.
Correct.
Read the disclosure. Now, this is going to be a little onerous, but if you're taking on single agency, which Jeff and Mike talked about on Monday, you have an obligation to protect this buyer. It's protecting. So if you didn't review the seller's disclosure statement and identify or call out some questions that were readily observable to a professional like you, they've got a cause of action against you as a single agent. Right? But I suspect a lot of you are not single agents, even though you're acting like one. Because what has to happen for you to be a single agent? You've got to have the buyer sign a single agent notice. And if you're having them sign a single agent notice, you got to have them sign consent to transition to transaction broker, or else you can't show any of our company listings. So right. I don't see a lot of single agent notices posted to our loops, which means we're transaction brokers. You can have the conversation with them, but if they don't sign the form, you are not a single agent.
I don't know. When I was when I started with you guys, that was part of the package. Like, we had to have that signed with the contract.
Well, that was a law back a few years ago. We had to get an agency notice signed, but they took that away because in Florida, you are deemed to be a transaction broker from the onset.
Correct.
So everybody's a transaction broker unless they sign a notice of non-rep, which is what I want you to sign with the FSBO, or they sign a single agent notice accepting you as your single agent.
Angelique says still in the package.
Yeah, it's in the package.
Yeah.
But if you're not having it signed and having a copy of it in your loop, it's not doing us any good.
Right, or taking the time to explain it. Right.
Well, the listing agreement's simple. We are single agents for our listings because we use the
Correct.
single agent listing agreement with the right to transition into transaction broker agreement. So on the listing side, we are single agents, which, same rule applies. You'd have to review the seller's disclosure statement and identify with the seller. This is a marketing tool. So you check this box and said there were leaks. Let's disclose this a little bit more.
Right. Help me get a better understanding when the leaks were they fixed. These things we need to know, right? And if you have, receipts or anything like that nature, can we go ahead and attach that to it? So this way we can show proof. Things like that. All those things matter because what is our job to do? To get the most money for our seller.
Yes.
Right. And going back to your car example, if the car is and if it has dents in it, the tires are worn, you're gonna get less money for that car on the trade, right?
Common sense. When you have a buyer interested in a pending property requesting backups, is there a script to encourage them to submit? Is there a script to use when asking the listing agent to sound out how solid? James, it's really all about rapport building. Right? So,
Chris
yeah.
said you have something. Sorry, go ahead. Chris said there's a contract issue in your email box, so
Okay.
pull it up. Yeah.
I'll look at that in just 1 second. Yeah, if the listing agent says it's pending, backups requested, I just showed you that we're damn good at what we do and 10% of our deals are canceling. So there's a shot. Now, and there's a psychological issue here too. I'm a seller. Chances are I've got an as-is contract. I've got a backup now. That gives me strength, right? So that buyer starts wiggling around or anything, I'm not going to be very friendly toward making accommodations to them because I've got a backup contract in place. So you miss 100% of the shots you never take. So if you don't put a backup in, you have no shot of getting that house. And I'll say it again, I highly recommend that if you got beat out, go for a backup, right? And if a house recently went pending, still go in with the backup. You know, the inspection period is probably 7 or 10 days. So you put a backup with that 7 to 10 days if it's a house that you think is a good one that went past, because you can see it canceling. See what Chris sent me. Oh, I got a bunch of messages in there, sorry. Kelly Foreman has a contract at 9644 Ivory Street in Ruskin. She represents the seller. Effective date 9/1, loan approval 15 days, 9/16, closing date 9/25. Buyer still needs till Wednesday to close. Today's 9/25. Lender just received final document and will clear to close today and release the closing disclosure today. Seller is refusing and has already stated the contract is void and to tear up the closing docs that he pre-signed, and he is coming to pick up his keys at 11 from the title today.
Whoa.
God, people just don't get out of their own friggin' ways. Prior to that message this morning, I've got a little issue with that, because if we have a clear to close today and they just sound out the closing disclosure, what's Dodd-Frank law say?
3 days.
The buyer has to have in their possession the closing disclosure for 3 days. And if the closing disclosure is not delivered in time, the closing is automatically extended for up to 10 days.
Yep.
Right? Prior to that message this morning, upon hearing from Kelly that the buyer needed a few extra days, he demanded that we reduced our commission to 5% and the buyer foregoes the 2,000 closing costs that are in the contract. What a jerk. He appears to be a high D personality. Yeah. Technically, the contract has an automatic extension of up to 10 days if the lender can't get the CD and provide the buyer their 3 days. If they can get the CD out today and the loan cannot be funded by the contracted closing date, that extension kicks in, the seller cannot cancel. I recommended to request the buyer to release the escrow immediately in exchange for an extension. That's the only way to ensure the seller gets the escrow if there really is an issue with the closing. Give me a call. I just want to put this in writing for you to reference. Now, okay. Sometimes, I didn't share my screen on it, so. Sometimes you have to be bold, right? That seller is a butthead, right? I mean, some shit happens. I mean, we are in COVID. We are in, I mean, I don't really care about all the crap that goes on out there right now because I'm not too worried about it personally, but there's a lot of scared people. And there's a lot of industries that are disrupted. Lending is one of them. Yeah. Right? Real estate is one of them too. I mean, we're not used to working from home and not being in an office environment. So things are slower, right? Lawyers are all messed up too. You know, they got their paralegals running around doing stuff. They run in the hallway, they pop in the office, they get what they need. And now you got to wait for them to answer the phone. I mean, there's just a lot of shit going on. And
you know what, too, Craig? right?
What?
Just to add to you, a lot of stuff going on. The mortgage industry are now backed up
Yes.
with the underwriters. So it's taking longer to when they submit the loan to underwriting to get to clear to close. It's taking more than 48 hours now to get that done, where it's like a 24, 40-hour thing. So please, we need to prepare our sellers and our buyers to let them know that, you know what, yes, this is the expected closing date. However, due to the surge, right, of loans that's going through, things are being backed up, So I think we need to prepare for that, because I see that a lot happening now.
But this is just a jerk move. A 3-day extension. He's supposed to close today, Friday. He's going to close Wednesday next week. So let's assume he does cancel today. Then we got to put the house back on the market. We're going to find another buyer. Buyer's got to get inspections. Buyer's got to get loan approval. We're going to extend the whole thing out. He's just pushing it further down. And there's no better buyer than the one you currently have. But sometimes I had this seller I was dealing with Aisa on, and he was an attorney, and he was a big shot attorney. And he made it be known that he worked for one of the largest, he was in corporate counsel for one of the largest real estate companies in the US. And now he's currently corporate counsel for one of the largest lenders in the US.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very similar to this guy. His closing had to be delayed a couple of days. And he was just adamant, hell no, I'm kicking them out of this contract. And you're going to cut your commission, and you're going to do this, and you're going to do. I'm like, I stood up to him and said, dude, you're a lawyer. You read the contract. I'm not cutting my commission. I'm not doing anything. I said, this buyer has an automatic extension, and you got to deal with it. And it became hostile. And then he threatened to sue me and all this stuff, unless I gave him $20,000 or something. And I fired back at him. I said, dude, that ain't going to happen. Sue me. I said, I've got errors and omissions insurance. My deductible's $5,000, so I'm out of pocket $5,000. You're not getting anything from me. And he says, well, you're going to take that attitude. I'm just going to close this deal myself. I said, fine. And you'll still get your commission. I said, good. Guess what happened? It closed, just like it was supposed to.
Exactly.
But it took me, and it's not like me, to do that. I mean, I got very aggressive with him. Very aggressive. In this case, I would tell this guy, look, obviously we're not seeing eye to eye on this. I'm the real estate professional. I know the contract. This buyer has an automatic extension. You need to call a lawyer and find out what your rights are. That's hard for agents to say that sometimes, but it's a really powerful thing to say. Look, I'm the real estate professional. I know how this works. You're not believing me. Please contact a lawyer and find out what your rights and obligations are. Exactly. And there's nothing wrong with that, because we are not a lawyer. We shouldn't be practicing to be one. Oh, Chris wrote in and said, Kelly did a great job getting a 15-day loan approval. Guys, this is the ninja stuff we're talking about, right? That's, I was talking to, I was on a Zillow call last week, and I'm going to repeat this for those of you who didn't maybe hear me say it last week. When you're in a multiple offer situation, best practice was shared to have the loan officer call the listing agent and tell the listing agent how qualified your buyer is. Because we tell you as our listing agent to call the buyer's lender and find out what's really going on. But how much more professional is it to have the loan officer call the buyer, the listing agent?
Yeah.
And the listing agent tells the seller, hey, I got a call from this buyer's loan officer. He said these people are golden, blah, 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 blah. They've already received tax returns. They've gotten all their paperwork in. They're good to go. That helps a lot.
Yeah, hear it right from the source,
I think Kelly wrote back, I said, this buyer's a butthead. She wrote, very much so. Yeah, Kelly, you did a great job getting a 15-day loan approval period. That's contract mastery. So if we didn't have that, if we didn't, and guys, get this one straight. When the loan approval period passes and the buyer does not cancel, the financing contingency is waived. Right?
Yes.
So you got a 30-day closing with a 15-day loan approval. Day 16, your seller's golden. You still got to deal with the escrow, but the contract is solid. And if you got, per the advice you gave earlier, Thomas, you got the initial deposit up front, You got the additional sizable deposit after the end of the inspection period. Then you got a 15-day loan period. Now you got something to fight over,
Yep.
right? So either that buyer was confident they're going to get a loan or their agent didn't advise them very well. But in any event, our seller was well protected with a 15-day loan approval period,
Correct.
right?
Yep.
So, and this is a tough situation. We have to deal with it all the time. But when the seller is arrogant and acts like this, and he knows it all, he wants to cancel, but the contract is in the buyer's favor, because if they get the CD out today,
Correct.
they got cleared to close. That just makes no sense. You know, I don't know. And maybe something else is going on in his life. You know, we got to think about those things too. What,
Right.
you know, that guy I was dealing with in the Key, with Aixa, he was trying to buy a house in the Keys that he was under contract on, subject to the closing of this house. So he was stressing out, and we don't know this to be a fact, but the wife has not been around. So we think there might be a divorce or something going on. That's why he was such a dickhead. But it just made no sense to not give these buyers a couple extra days when we're going to put the house back on the market, find it. And this is like the third transaction he's done with Aixa. So something's going on in their life. And that's where we as real estate people have to become kind of counselors. And maybe he's really not a jerk. He's just having a bad day or something's off in his life. He needs to be counseled that this is the best buyer available right now. And unless he changes his mind and doesn't want to sell his house, it just makes no sense.
And like you said, going back to your point, you know, if we put the home back on the market, we're going to start this process all over again. So waiting 3 days versus putting the home back on putting it on the market, waiting for another offer, and then going through another inspection period, going through the financing period, you're 30, 45 days out. He told the office the only way he will extend is a 5% commission and a $2,000 closing cost back because he's losing money.
So there's a lot more money because you got to make an extra mortgage payment.
Yep, that too.
Oh, look at this. I recently spoke with a lender that said he was so pleased that I called and didn't respect agents that didn't call to check on the viability of the buyer. Good.
Yeah. I had one agent, she's the listing agent, and she called the buyer's lender to find out what was going on, and they had a couple of issues. So she was already in front of it. So this way she can let her seller know. Her seller was a C personality. So, you know, she wanted to be very detailed and be very explicit on what was going on with the buyer. Instead of calling the buyer's agent to find out, she called the lender. So that's the best way you can do it.
Yeah.
There's no BS.
Kelly said he told the title office the only way he'll extend is we lower our commission to 5% and the $2,000 closing cost. He has a contract. He has a listing agreement says he's paying us 6%. He has a contract that he's paying the buyers $2,000, and the buyers have an automatic extension for a closing because he's losing money. He's losing 3 days worth of prorations. And he's got no mortgage.
Another month of mortgage, right? Exactly.
He doesn't have a mortgage. He said he paid cash for the home, so it's just he's paying 3 extra days of property taxes and insurance. So his taxes are $3,600 a year. It's $1 a day, $10 a day. It's $30. All right, guys. So what we want to just talk about today is slow down. Let's be extra diligent. Let's reduce our cancellation rates. Let's have discussions with the buyers and sellers about which contract, and they're both fine, but which one do they feel more comfortable going with? A buyer that wants to make sure he gets the house, I personally think is a stickier contract if they use a regular contract. A buyer that wants the freedom and flexibility to walk away, the as is where he should be at. But by having that conversation, I think you're going to get more engaging. You'll get better reviews. You'll just be more of a consummate professional, right? So what else are right? Oh, and something Chris did on Wednesday I really liked is he said, what will you commit to doing today? I think that's the way we should end our classes every day. And somebody said, I commit to cleaning out my pantry and my trunk. Fine, commit to something and get it done today. Commit to getting into your Zap and getting your red balls done today. I mean, schedule an hour sometime today to get into Zap, whatever your commitment is. Commit to one thing to get done today.
Yep.
Right? What else could it be? Your Zap, your FSBO research,
Contact. Yeah.
your 15 contacts today. Whatever it is, commit to something today, and then you're going to have a very good day today.
Absolutely.
That
And
works
if
for
I
me.
leave one thing with the guys, you know, your past is your lesson, your present is your gift, and your future is your motivation. So let's get motivated and make things happen, guys.
Yeah, you saw 235 sales in the last 30 days. So, and you see the hot sheets are coming out this week with 10, 15, 20 deals a day. So it's slowing down a little bit, but it's slowing down to warp speed. So be good, get some listings, people, and practice your contract knowledge. Happy Friday.
Commit to something today.
Commit to something today. All right.
All right.
Happy Friday.